Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Chet here from Avion Technology here in the Chicagoland area. I'm drinking my coffee as we speak today. So, what is today's lecture about? Yes, so marketing tools for a personal portfolio website, right? So basically, first, who are we? We are a digital agency that works with other agencies to help scale them up, turn them around, make them more profitable. You know that. We also work with other small businesses to do the same. Basically give them a really good digital presence, either through a website, through an app, or digital marketing. So every week I take like one sector of the industry and talk about talk about how that sector can improve its web presence. So in this week's lecture, I'm going to talk about a personal portfolio website and how so there's a lot of people who have personal portfolio websites, right? You have not just like artists, like jewelry, costume designers, fashion designers, those kind of people, but also real estate, right? People have a portfolio in real estate. There's art collectors, they have a portfolio. So there's people who have portfolios, and so it's a portfolio website. So how can they market it, right? So number one is content marketing. That's the best way, because so usually what happens is that a person who has a portfolio website is usually operating in a certain kind of a niche, right? They are operating in a specific area, and content marketing is the best way, because whenever you are operating in a niche, people are going to come to you for your subject matter expertise, period, right? So you got to be using ways and means to showcase that subject matter expertise. Like, I've written offline networking, but if you're operating in a niche, for you to go to a local chamber of commerce sometimes is not the best idea. But you can definitely go to an industry event, right? And you will meet, people there. So every time you operate in a niche, there's pros and cons. The flip side, the bad part of it is that, especially if you're too specialized, is that sometimes it's just hard to find customers for you. But a lot of times customers come searching for you also if you're operating within a specialization. So the whole effort is just to kind of get your name out there so that the ones who are searching for you can find you. So when you do content marketing, which is essentially like blogs and case studies and that kind of stuff, but white papers, even videos, video channels, all of these things, then you're showcasing that subject matter expertise, and then someone is going to find you and come to you, right? Number one. Number two is guest blogging. There's a lot of Huffington Post is one, but there's a lot of people who have now been blogging for 10, 15 years, and they have a considerable name. So see which are those in your industry, and then see if you can become a guest blogger there. Now keep in mind that if you write 2 blogs, you're not gonna get a sale or a lead or anything like that right away, right? What you are doing with all of this is creating awareness in your target market. From awareness to closure is often like a 1 year, 2 year cycle. I always say this, especially if you're starting out in business, or if you're starting out if you're 25, 28, because this is a mistake I made big time. You have to spend at least a year or 3 years putting your name out there, right? Going to networking events, meeting people, making the connections, right? And then you're going to start seeing the results out of that. A lot of times what we end up doing is that we go for these events when we're hungry for business, when sales are down, when we need business, and that's the worst time to start marketing, right? There's a saying that the best time to plant a seed was 20 years back, the second best time is today, right? So the best time to start marketing was 5 years ago, the second best time is today. But keep in mind that you're going to see the fruits after like 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, right? None of this is going to give fruits right away, number one. Number two, the crux of marketing is in the consistency, right? Pick any of these, but keep on doing it consistently, right? And that's it's easier said than done. I do a lot of networking within the Chicagoland area, but I'm not as consistent as I want to be, right? I'll be honest with you. So it's especially if you're running a small business, it's extremely difficult to be consistent. But marketing, is one of those games where the one who's consistent is the one who kind of gets the results, gets the dividend, right? So guest blogging. Next is offline networking. I spoke about that. The whole thing with networking, right? Offline, I have seen it's a game of. There's a lot of factors. Number one, do your research before you join a group. There's a lot of groups out there that are really struggling for relevance. You don't want to go and join that group, right? Which is anyway going to go, which is going to dissolve in like 1 year. So see which are the correct groups, both within your local chamber of commerce also and within your industry also, and then go and join the relevant ones. And then once you found a group, see if so networking is always a little painful, because especially cold networking, right? Because we are going out of our comfort zone and making an introduction. It's almost like being that guy or gal, in the high school courtyard, high school basketball, basketball whatever, the basketball yard, and all those high school kind of fears and phobias come back to you again, right? You feel, what is everyone going to say about you? What, how will everyone feel? A lot of times, I have experienced this. When you're out networking, you go into networking groups which are much more established than you. So the cliques, the clans, they're already there and you can see it. And like I said, all those fears and the phobias from your high school, they kind of take over. And your first reaction is to run away, right? But, I'm going to tell you that don't do that. Stick around. Why? Because in my experience, I have found that people are not as judgmental as we think they are. That's number one. Number two, people are probably thinking about what you are thinking about them. So our fear always is, what is everyone else thinking about me? A lot of times people are thinking the same. They're worried about what you are thinking about them. That's number two. Number three is, I have also seen that a lot of times they want to welcome new people. So they will go out of their way to make you feel welcome, right? So that initial phobia, that initial fear, a lot of times is misplaced. As you get to know people, as you spend more time with them, you will find that they are not as bad as you think. Now, there are a few groups which are extremely judgy. And give yourself about 3 months. And if in those 3 months you don't feel a certain sense of attachment or warmth for a certain group, then I think maybe you should consider leaving. Between 3 to 6 months, right? If you do feel that warmth, if you do feel that connection, then I think that's lifelong. Then you're well set. But if you don't, then I think sometimes it's not a bad idea to check another group out. There are a few personalities that you'll always see in any group, right? There's always the bully who kind of hates you for no fault of yours. They just don't like you, and they will just give you a hard time. That personality type is at work. That personality type often is within your family and friends, and that personality type is often in networking groups, right? I have learned to ignore that personality type. You try and make conversation with them. If not, you just ignore them, because I'm in my mid-40s and frankly I don't care about why someone doesn't like me. That's his or her problem. But there's also other personality types. There's a leader of the group who's a lot of times a pretty decent mentor, and they will kind of guide you and help you make those connections. I've also seen there's usually a very caring personality type also, and these people will actually go out of their way to make sure that you feel welcome and you feel that warmth. I've met a few people like that, and those are the people that I kind of always, those are the ones that make me go back to a group again. Because they're just extremely nice and extremely caring, and I have ended up referring a lot of business to them, and they have helped me make connections. And so I kind of like that personality type. But like I said, it is intimidating. I will be the first person to say that. You have your sweaty palms, your throat goes dry, you want to get the hell out of there. That's natural, right? But if you stick it through, and it's extremely difficult to stick it through, by the way. It's easier said than done. I have had my own stories about networking. I want to do a series about that at some point in time. But like I said, give it that 3 to 6 month time span. And if you click, if you vibe, if you gel well with that group, if you feel that there is enough of a gravitational force for you to stick around, then stick around. But if you feel that everyone's too toxic, there's just too much judgment, there's just too much politics, then like I said, we all have better things to do with our time, frankly, and So just go find some other group. Next is online forums. Again, this is iffy. If you find a good group where people are supportive, great. If not, then it's hell. One thing I have noticed with online forums, and I'm going to be candid about it, is that somehow people tend to be nastier versions of themselves online. I don't know why, but it's probably because of the anonymity. But people do tend to be nastier versions of themselves. A lot of people are unfazed by it. Like for example, I don't care about trolling or whatever. It doesn't matter to me at all. But there are people, especially when it comes to things like body shaming and looks, and especially and for younger folk, right? These are things which they are very sensitive about. So stereotyping, all these things. So just be careful. Now, online it's still a wild west, and if you're going to go into the wild west, then you got to have a little bit of thick skin. Google Ads is it's not a hit or miss, but you need a budget for Google Ads, right? You can start with as low as $10, but I usually recommend at least $500. You start seeing the results right away, but I usually recommend Google Ads for someone who's been in business for a year or 2 years. They have that kind of money to spend, because like everything, for pay-per-click, you need to make the investment to see the results, right? And for the leads to start coming in, that's another 6 months. So what usually happens with pay-per-click is that you start getting more traffic to your website, but for that website traffic to turn into leads, that's another 3 to 6 month kind of a deal. So if you have that kind of money, great. If not, then maybe you gotta wait a year or two. I like podcasts. Why? You can, and especially podcasts where there's about 10-20 people who are listening, because it helps you create your own little tribe, right? It helps you create your own little ecosystem. I have come to realize that I have a very good friend. She always says this, but I've kind of come to believe in that. Is that I'm not for everyone, right? My message, my personality, who I am, is not for everyone, right? There's a specific kind of person. There's a specific kind of personality that I gel with. Usually deep, usually philosophical. I have read a lot. I've read more than 1,000 books in my lifetime, so I usually tend to approach things much more intellectually. So I'm not for everyone. So I usually like podcasts where there's some level of depth, there's some level of philosophy, there's just some level of intellectualism. So what I like about podcasts is that it's like going to a party where everyone kind of gels well with each other, because people who attend podcasts are generally people who like the content. So it's a very good way to create a tribe. Now, there's two ways, right? You can either attend, be a guest on people's podcasts, or you can have your own podcast. If you're having your own podcast, remember, it's like a newsletter. You have to be extremely regular about it, right? Because there's nothing worse than a newsletter which is inconsistent, right? It's a bad reflection on the owner. So if you're going to do a podcast, carve out 2, 3, 4 hours in a day, in a month when you're going to do it, but do it regularly, right? So hopefully this should be good for you, right? Again, none of this is rocket science. None of this is things that have not been explored earlier. I think the only takeaway that I could give you out of all of this is that you're a brand. So unfortunately, and this is very cliched, I usually don't like to talk about it like this, because I personally feel that we live in like super capitalistic times. So when people say like, oh, you're a brand, everyone's constantly selling themselves, I don't like it, right? Because that's really extending things a little too extreme. But that is also a reality, that when you're out at work, people are judging you, whether we like it or not. So everyone is a brand at the end of the day. So if you are a brand, then why not present your best, put your best foot forward, right? I mean, if you are going to be judged, at least let's make an effort to be judged positively, right? I'm I try to dress really well at events. One reason for that is that I want someone's first impression of me to be a good first impression, right? That just opens doors. Now I could always dress like a slob, and that's my personal choice. But I feel that, why should I have the right to impress someone so that doors open for me, right? I have the right for someone to remember me in a good light, right? In a positive way. That's a right that I have. So why not exercise that right? Right? So it's just the optimistic way of looking at things. So in a nutshell, take a look at these. Take one, right? I always say take one. Try it over 3 months. And if nothing sticks, maybe try it for another 3 months. After 6 months, if nothing sticks, maybe try something else. But give it enough time. Right? Give it enough time, nurture it. That's when you'll see the results. Here, I have to say this line at the end of every video. Here at Avion, we've helped a lot of businesses do this. So if you're one of those, give us a shout. I would definitely like to sit down with you and discuss this in further detail. Otherwise, if you've liked the content, press like. If you want to subscribe, press subscribe. If you want to stay in touch with us, press on the bell icon, and we'll keep you notified every time we upload a video. Thank you so much, all of you. You have an awesome day, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.